Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Connor, and you are listening to another episode of Film Talks. The sun is shining upon us once again. Thank you, sunlight, for not screwing me over. As always, we have three topics we want to talk about in these episodes. First up, biopics about authors, not musicians, authors, playwrights, that kind of style. I want to talk about ones that I've seen recently, ones that I've seen, just watching, and why I like them. And then after that, I want to talk about 5 movies that I have found were poorly reviewed, not just by critics, but by audience members, and why I think we deserve to give them a second chance because, maybe they're not as bad as you think they are. And then last up, I want to talk about the new Space Jam movie because, of course, I got to talk about the new Space Jam movie. And I'm pretty sure maybe some of you will be able to figure out what my opinion of this movie is before I even talk about it. So, with that, let's get into it. Okay, so what are we starting off with? Biopics about authors. And why do I make the distinction that I'm talking about authors and not musicians? Obviously, we've seen a lot of musician biopics that have come around. We had the one about Queen, I guess Freddie Mercury. We had the one about Elton John. We've had one about Johnny Cash. The reason why I think that authors are a little more interesting than musicians is because musicians are just a lot more popular. Like everybody knows their dirty laundry. It's always in the e-news and all that stuff. And plus, because they're usually about the singer, the singer is just somebody, what they look like, how they sing. I feel like you know a lot more about the musician than you know about the author. The author is kind of like what came out of their head, but you don't know why that was in their head to begin with. And just a little bit of personal information about me, I've always wanted to write a story. The hardest part for me, especially because I was trying most of my writing in middle school and high school, so I would never show anybody this writing because the grammar is awful and the words are weird, the story is strange, and it's embarrassing. But what I found as I was writing was I just couldn't capture anything that I was reading. And this was a little disheartening for me. I was like, I don't understand how these people are able to write these big, grand stories. Because I just can't, first off, I can't come up with an idea that's grand enough. And second, I just can't keep pushing. I can't maintain that vision for too long. And so you watch these movies like Finding Neverland starring Johnny Depp and Kate Winslet, and it talks about how the guy created Peter Pan. You watch Goodbye Christopher Robin, where they talk about how they made Winnie the Pooh and all that stuff. There's a Tolkien movie that just recently came out. Obviously, it's about how he made The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then even Saving Mr. Banks. It's a Disney movie. It came out with Tom Hanks, and it's how Disney was able to, I guess, buy the rights for the Mary Poppins movie. And I guess Saving Mr. Banks is the only one that's a little weird because it's not entirely about how she made the story. So I'll focus mostly on the other three. But what I find most interesting, because it runs throughout all of these movies, is basically, and I guess it's obvious for people who are older than me at the time, but these people, they came up with these great stories because they had memories, and they were able to use these moments in their lives and translate them onto page in a way that other people probably wouldn't have thought of. And I guess it's like a two-parter. So not only do you need these interesting memories that maybe other people haven't gone through, but on top of it, you have to have the creativity to use that memory and turn it into a story. So Finding Neverland, you have Johnny Depp's character is this playwright, and he's playing with these kids who lost their father, and they're kind of struggling, and based on his own life, he knows that real life can kind of push a kid's imagination down and force them to grow up maybe earlier than they want to, and it's kind of a sad thing. And Johnny Depp's character is someone who was forced to grow up, but kind of never wanted to. And that's evident because he's not doing grown-up man things. He's playing with children who aren't even his, and all this stuff. The author himself is Peter Pan, and these kids were kind of his muse, so he was able to kind of put them into his story, and they were the kids in Neverland, like Wendy and all them, who were just sort of regular kids, and he was kind of bringing them to Neverland so that they didn't feel forced to grow up, that they could just live in their childhood for a little bit longer. And not only does it show you in this movie how the story was created, but it also shows you why it resonates with people. But I'm not here to talk about Finding Neverland. I'm here to talk about these movies, and it's so interesting to me. It's just hearing these people's stories, which is what you get in any biopic, obviously, like musicians or somebody who created McDonald's or whatever. There was that Founder movie with Michael Keaton, and it talks about how McDonald's became McDonald's and all that. There are plenty of biopics, but the thing that gets me with the authors is it's not only about someone's life. It's kind of like a little Easter egg contest. It's a fun exercise to kind of see what element, especially if you know the source material that the person wrote, you can kind of see the little moments in their lives that helped create that story. Because I think a lot of the good biopics do a good job at not spelling it out for you and saying, hey, this is where that comes from. They just sort of throw the moment in, and you're like, oh, so in Tolkien, where you're seeing all this war and all this sadness, where did that come from? Oh, he was in a world war and he saw people die in front of him, and this is why he's able to write these things and all that stuff. Or in Christopher Robin, where he's able to talk to his kid, and his kid is I think Christopher Robin does a better job at creating drama around the story itself, and what does the story do to the family. I think oftentimes these biopics will either focus before the story's written or when the story just comes out, but what happens after the story is successful, which in this case, Christopher Robin, the reason why it's so sad is that this dad made a story for his kid, and then he started profiting from it, and it became less of a dad and son moment and became just a moment that was out for the world. And the son was like, this isn't what I wanted to be with my dad, and now this moment that I felt was just between me and him is now for everyone. I really, really, really like these movies because, again, it shares not just the depth of the story that the person created, but also why it was created and how it affects life. Because I truly believe, and I think most people can tell this, that whether it's a book, a movie, a TV show, it's not just isolated to its medium. It affects people. And these movies do a great job at explaining what that effect is and all that. So I do encourage anyone, if you haven't watched any of these movies, watch the stuff like Finding Neverland, Goodbye Christopher Robin, Tolkien, Saving Mr. Banks. Watch these kinds of movies. They're usually very sad, so prepare yourself for that. I'll also say they're not completely truthful. Obviously, with any movie, they're going to kind of take some liberties and say, hey, we want to make this a little more dramatic than maybe it was in real life. But even taking it with a grain of salt, they're always very cool stories because it's like a story in a story, and it's a fun little dynamic. So that was biopics about authors. Next up, so I'm a little nervous about this because I don't know how people are going to take this. So I have 5 movies here that I was just sort of looking at, and I was like, it kind of started with one movie, to be honest. Where I was like, hey, a lot of people don't like this movie, but you know what? I don't mind it. Maybe I'm not rewatching it all the time. Maybe it's not my favorite movie, but it's not bad. So that movie was actually Terminator Salvation. I'm not a big Terminator guy, sure, but it's got Christian Bale, Sam Worthington, and It's for some reason I just dig it. I don't know why. Um, I guess maybe for me, they finally show the apocalypse, right? So like all the other Terminator movies are either leading up to this apocalypse and don't show it, or they try to go back in time and stop it from happening. This one actually shows the Terminator uprising and the rebellion against the Terminators. And it's what I've been wanting. I guess that I feel like that's what everybody's been wanting. Sure, but like I said, this is one of 5 movies that people don't like. So I went on Rotten Tomatoes, which again, always take it with a grain of salt because Rotten Tomatoes, 33% critic score, 54% audience score. So yes, the audience score is higher, but not by a lot. A lot of people don't like this movie. And maybe you could say, yeah, it's a little boring at times. It's not a perfect movie, sure. But there's some cool stuff in here. When Sam Worthington like figures out that he's actually a Terminator and he's just dressed up like a person and he thinks he's a person, that's cool. And then seeing Christian Bale finally as John Connor, my namesake. I mean, I gotta root for him. And he's actually a John Connor who's cool. I feel like this that's actually probably the best part of the movie is that the whole Terminator franchise is like John Connor is the guy. Uh, if anyone's seen the newest Terminator Dark Fate, they kind of just get rid of that and say John Connor is nobody. But most of the movies, they're like, John Connor's the dude. He is the savior of the human race. And in this movie, who better to play the savior of the human race than Christian Bale? And he kills it. And, just seeing him ride this motorcycle and taking out Terminators and just be a total cool, badass guy, I don't mind it. I dig it. The action scenes at the end with Christian Bale trying to take out the Terminator, and then the Terminator reaches forth and scratches him across the eye. Um, it's great. It's great. I probably it's great because of the action scenes, and then you get like different kinds of Terminators. So there's one Terminator that's like a motorcycle that shoots people. You obviously have flying Terminators, regular Terminators. You have like Terminator like worm things that are like in the water. Forget who could not dig that. It's Terminators in the water. I'm not gonna recommend any of these movies, but it definitely deserves higher than a 33% critic rating. That's a bit ridiculous. Second up, we have Sky High, and I'm gonna blow your mind for a second here. Okay, Sky High, not only one of the best superhero movies ever, one of the best high school movies ever. Okay, and I'll fight anybody who disagrees with that. Sky High, 73% critic rating. Okay, that's not bad. 57% audience rating. I'm going to rag on everybody who reviewed this movie. How dare you let the critics review Sky High and give it a higher rating than your own audience score? The audience is always supposed to be higher than the critics. The critics are supposed to be like, oh, well, the artistic presence and the camera movements and the script, it was just so perfectly crafted. And the audience is supposed to be like, ooh, bombs exploded. Guy said funny line. I love this movie. And yet you reviewed Sky High poorly? Makes no sense. The whole thing is just amazing. You have Kurt Russell as basically Superman, and his son is supposed to be like the son of basically the best superheroes, and he doesn't have any powers, and then he gets powers, and just to find out that this girl who's like super hot at his school, who's been liking him, is actually his parents' mortal enemy, who's just been turned back in time into a younger version of herself. And there's this massive weapon called the pacifier, and nobody knows what it does until we figure it out, and turns people into babies. Oh, and then on top of it, there's a bus driver who wants to be a superhero but doesn't have any superpowers, and is just a guy who drives a flying bus. And then and then there's not only is there superheroes, but there's sidekick school for like the guys with crappy superpowers, like this one guy who can glow in the dark and another guy who can turn into slime, and then this girl who can turn into a purple hamster. This movie has everything, okay? Everything. There's a cafeteria fight between a guy with super strength and a guy who can shoot fire out of his hands. This movie's great, okay? I would defend that. 57%, way too low. Do better, people. And then And then we have The Vow, okay? We have The Vow. The Vow is 100% not the worst rom-com I have ever seen. 31% critic rating, which is so low. Like, that's tanking low. Like, there's no way 31% critic rating, 63% audience rating, which, by the way, 63% higher than Sky High, higher than Terminator Salvation. That's a little sad. But what this movie does, Rachel McAdams, Channing Tatum, basically any rom com with Rachel McAdams should not be a low rating because she can carry a movie all on her own. Any rom com, give it to her, it's going to be a success. I actually watched this movie when I was a little younger. I would talk about it in school, and everybody would pick on me and be like, "Oh, you like the movie The Vow?" People would always just like, "Oh, it's Channing Tatum, and it has the title The Vow." Oh, that's stupid. It's a compelling story, and the fact that it's sort of based on real life, like I kind of like that chivalrous stuff where like they're in love and they're married or whatever, and then she gets into a car accident and she forgets him completely. And her life is like reset until the point where before she met him. So she doesn't know who he is, even though they're married. So now the whole story is him trying to show her. It's kind of like 50 First Dates, except instead of it ending with him constantly reminding her that they're married, it like starts with that. And it's not like a short-term memory loss. It's like actually I don't remember the definition of short-term and long-term memory, but it's she just forgets the whole time period. So now not only is he trying to remind her that they love each other, he's also competing with her family, who she left because of disagreements, but those disagreements in her mind never happened. And so there's like this craziness where her family is kind of pretending like those disagreements never happened. And then in sort of like a destiny stroke, the disagreements happen again and just naturally, I'm pretty sure. And then just like it all just naturally happens again where she just falls in love with him and he doesn't even have to try. Actually, when he was trying, it was actually not going well. But then they just let time progress and destiny go and they came together. Love it. Who doesn't like that stuff? That's some heartwarming material right there. 63%, sure, I'm fine with that audience rating, but 31% critic rating? Like even if you want to criticize Channing Tatum's acting, like Rachel McAdams, how dare you? How dare you 31%? And I wanted to throw an animated movie in here too. So, uh this might be kind of an unknown. I can't tell. I don't know how many people have seen the movie Nine. Nine is a movie with basically starring Elijah Wood, probably other people, but he's the big name. I feel like, and they're like these little stitched crochet puppet people that have that are real, that are alive, and they wake up in this land that's been kind of destroyed by war, and I think that you kind of assume nukes and all that, and there's this basically robots have kind of taken over, but the robots are kind of dormant, and there's only this one creature that kind of is kind of attacking these crochet creature things, and it's pretty good. The ambiance is cool. It's kind of scary. I think cartoon wise, I feel like that was kind of the thing that hindered it. Adult cartoons tend not to do well because nobody knows what to do with it. It's definitely an adult cartoon because it's pretty scary. There's this one creature that's like the body of a of one of the crochet people, but then it opens up into this little tentacle monster and it grabs the other crochet people and tries to just like turn them. It's disgusting. It's kind of creepy. Um, but it's got some depth to it because they find out that like they're alive because this doctor split his soul into a bunch of pieces, and so they're all basically different parts of the doctor, and that's why they all have very different personalities. And they're trying to defeat the robots and bring back life to the earth. So 57 and 56% critic and audience. Definitely a little low. I feel like the depth of this movie deserves more. And then last, we have Solo, a Star Wars story. I had to go something super popular here. 70% critic rating, 64% audience rating. And if you don't already know, I think 100% of this bad review business is because of The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi whether you liked it or not, definitely split the fandom of Star Wars and kind of ruined things because people liked it so little that they wanted to kind of lash out at Disney, which, I'm kind of amazed that this worked, but nobody went to see the Han Solo movie. And the people that did just tried to review bomb it and everything so that Disney would, feel the impact of how they were wronged by The Last Jedi. And so I think that this movie doesn't get its dues simply because people didn't like The Last Jedi and wanted to lash out at Disney. If you watch Solo: A Star Wars Story, it is not terrible. It is not amazing. It's an interesting story. Emilia Clarke, love watching her, so it's fun that she gets a shot. They throw Darth Maul in at the end, and that's what pisses me off the most. If people had just gone to seen it, we could have seen Darth Maul again. I mean, wasted opportunity. I was a little upset that they got rid of the Millers who did they were the original directors and they did Jump Street and the Lego Movie. So like they're kind of like these funny comedic guys and they got rid of them because I guess they thought it was a comedy, which I mean like why would you hire comedy directors and not want a comedy? And so they hired Ron Howard who was kind of a safe bet, but I didn't hate it. Really didn't. And Paul Bettany, I dug. I liked that it was kind of like more focused on the criminal underworld of Star Wars, which I think we need more of. And I think after seeing, The Mandalorian and Boba Fett and all that stuff, I think Disney is starting to realize how cool the Star Wars Underground is. So 70%, 64%, it's not terrible, but I feel like it could have gotten higher. Just looking at other Star Wars movies, I don't think it was that bad. It was just kind of basic. So, yeah. And yeah, so now we get to the part where I talk about what I'm watching. And this week, it's Space Jam. Space Jam, what, A New Legacy or whatever? Something, whatever. It's the LeBron James Space Jam movie. And before I even get into it, for those of you who are new, I like to ask myself a few questions in determining whether I liked a previously viewed film or show. It's just a few questions, and I feel like it helps hone my thinking when I'm reviewing these movies. Because sometimes I go off on tangents, forget what I'm talking about, and other times it's just I get a little emotional, and then I don't even have a rating in mind. So these questions help me hone in a little bit. So first off, is the storyline rushed or bloated? Super bloated. Super bloated. It's not rushed at all. It's just like it's a kids movie. I understand that, but there's just stuff you didn't need. I feel like they're in some ways they're trying to pay homage to the original Space Jam, but it's like it's not that kind of movie. Like you don't have to be artistic with Space Jam. I just felt like Space Jam is about basketball and the Looney Tunes. And there weren't enough Looney Tunes. I felt like they were trying too hard to make a LeBron's movie. When even if you watch the original Space Jam, it's not really Jordan's movie. Jordan is in it, but the Looney Tunes carry it. Newman from Seinfeld carries it. I always forget his name. And Bill Murray carries it. And Jordan is just like he's just that kind of like the center of the movie that everything's gravitating around. LeBron in this movie, he tries to be basically everything, which I guess you could say is what he tries to do on the court. But are the characters relatable? Second question I like to ask. Heck no. What? Are any of these people? No, I mean, of course not. The Looney Tunes are definitely not relatable. They shouldn't be. They're meant to be these wacky, crazy people. LeBron is so strange because I feel like he thinks he can act. Okay, and I wanna apologize if I come off as overly critical of LeBron, but it's kind of annoying to me. Like he's not an actor, but I guess maybe he thinks he is, or somebody told him he is. He's like that like kid that goes on American Idol and sings really good, like hard but sucks, and like is just has no idea that he's bad at singing. He can't act, but the directors and all these people, like they put him in a position where he needed to act, and I'm like, why? Jordan didn't act in the original Space Jam. He couldn't act. He got carried. And there's no problem with that. He's a basketball player. He's not an actor. The reason why he's in the movie is so he can play the basketball game. That is it. And he's trying to deliver these lines, and he's like, there's this one part where he's about to get sucked into this Warner Brothers universe digital realm, and he goes, "What in the Matrix hell?" or something like that. Like, who talks like that? What? It's supposed to be a kids movie, so yes, I probably shouldn't care that much, but like, Like, I can watch the original Space Jam and not be, like, upset about it. Like, there's this one line that Newman says to Jordan where he's like, "Yo, get ready for the game. Grab your Hanes and your Big Mac and put on your Nikes and all this stuff." And it's, like, obviously over the top, but I feel like it's supposed to be, like, a little ironic a little bit, like a little, poking yourself in the face kind of thing. Like, this movie has that, but, like, it's not self-aware. It's like it's trying to be self-aware, which is like way worse. Like like when somebody's trying to be self-aware and like and yet the audience feels like they don't completely get it. That's it's awkwardness. That's what you get. You get cringe, and you don't want cringe. You want like kind of like self-aware comedy that's kind of poking fun at yourself, laughing. I don't know. Third question. Does the film or TV show draw attention to the fact that it's fake? Yeah, actually. Here's something that's weird. So, in the first Space Jam, they have kind of 2D animation with LeBron. Now, the 2D animation is a lot better than you would see in a regular Looney Tunes episode. Like, you definitely can see the budget of it. In this one, they decided at some point to turn the Looney Tunes from 2D to 3D. And I hate it. Oh, it's so weird looking. Like, and there's no reason. Like I guess you could say maybe the reasoning for making them 3D is so that they blend into the CGI backgrounds a little better, and they make the transition from real life LeBron to fake Looney Tunes seem nicer. But like, who cares? Who cares? It's a kids movie, and nobody wants to see like some like weird some weird version of Bugs Bunny. They just want to see Bugs Bunny. And then fourth question, do I like the characters enough to rewatch it? This question's actually funny because I would probably say no, but I rewatched it purposefully so I could rewatch it with my dad. And you know what I found upon rewatching it was whenever they allow the Looney Tunes to be the Looney Tunes, I actually like the movie. I would watch it just to watch the Looney Tunes, which in that case, just watch the cartoon. Like, just watch the Looney Tunes. And plus Don Cheadle, what did they do to this man? Like it's terrible. They made him overact to the point where it just felt like they were trying to make LeBron James's acting look natural and Don Cheadle look bad. So, I mean, he's funny because he's an actual actor, but it was so strange because there were some parts that were just again cringy in this movie, and some of them involved him, and you're just like, what is going on in this movie? I so yes, I have rewatched it, but I probably wouldn't again. I don't know if that counts. I might have sold myself out, so by actually rewatching it. But I wouldn't recommend rewatching it. I wouldn't say, hey, this is a movie that you're gonna want to see over and over again. I don't think compared to the first one, I feel like the first one, based on the time that it was made, the stars that are in the movie, that it'll be kind of like this piece of culture kind of thing. I don't think this movie has that kind of fame. Like, yes, it has like Michael B. Jordan, like the Michael B. Jordan reference. That was kind of funny, where they're like, "Hey, I found Michael Jordan," and then he comes in, they're like, "That's Michael B. Jordan. You couldn't find Michael A. Jordan." they're cracking stuff, and he tries to give like a motivational speech. So like this movie has stars, I guess, but they tried to make it more dramatic than it needed to be, and I feel like that's got to be a knock, because it's like with romantic comedies or just straight comedies where they're like super funny and raunchy for the whole movie, and then at the end they're like, oh, we can't be funny anymore. We have to like give a good conclusion to the movie, so we got to be dramatic and all that. And you're like, no, a good comedy or good romantic comedy should be able to keep the same tone throughout the whole movie. And this movie, it's a kids movie that's supposed to be wacky and fun, but then they try to like transition between that and this dramatic family drama, and it doesn't work. And you're like, I don't even want to see that anyways. You could have just told the whole movie from Bugs Bunny's perspective, and that would have been fine. I thought it was kind of funny though that also like LeBron, like they posted that this movie did really well in its first week, and LeBron's like, shout out to the haters or whatever. I'm like, what does this have to do with haters? This isn't like sports. This is like movies where people can just like not like a movie. Like you don't have to be a hater to not like the movie. it's like, I don't know, in terms of like kids movies, it's just not there. I feel like as a kid I would probably rather watch the first one instead of the second one, even though the second one has like updated like effects. Like that's all you get in this movie is just updated effects. And then now you have the director of this Space Jam: A New Legacy saying he wants to do a third one with like Dwayne Johnson. And I guess Space Jam is no longer going to be about basketball. I don't know. It shouldn't be a franchise. How about this? Let's stop franchising things that aren't meant to be franchised. So hopefully that never happens. And yeah, so that's my review of Space Jam: A New Legacy. You can check out the results of my, all that stuff wherever I put it on the YouTube video. And yeah, so that's all I got for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. You can find me Film Talks on YouTube. Subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Like the video. Film.talks official is my Instagram and Facebook. You can find little things that I might post and all that stuff, and you can follow and like that, and you can figure out when I post my newest episodes. Usually they're on Saturdays. You can also find my podcast, Film Talks, on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and I think Google. Although, yeah, basically wherever you find a podcast, you'll be able to find it. And yeah, so that's all I got. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you around. Hope you all have a great week. So long.